Language.
At long last, it's lasting a little long, boys.
Think we lost the element of surprise.
Wait a second. No one else is going to deal with the fact that Cap just said language?
I know.
Find the septic.
And for gosh sake, watch your language.
That's not going away anytime soon. You bet your ass.
Steve, you said a bad language word.
Did you tell everyone about
The
that?
handle's imprinted, right? Like a security code?
Out with the platinum bastard.
Steve doesn't like that kind of talk.
You know what, Romanov?
Fury, you son of a bitch.
Ooh, you kiss your mother with that mouth?
Altitude is...
Well, welcome ladies and gents, and I think it goes without say that it's been a chaotic past couple of weeks, especially with things like podcasts, journalists, politicians, and even the Human Rights Commission stepping in or getting involved. So yeah, when things happen in South Africa, I don't think a lot of people are shocked at all. Everybody expects something to happen, but in this particular situation, I think there's more to it. I was hoping a lot more creators would have brought it up, but only one or two of them have, and also it's been in passing, so they didn't really nail down the topic. So I've decided to do a whole video dedicated towards that, because even though I think the situation may seem like it has boiled over, I think it's gonna come back, and then we're gonna get to either see their true intention, or it may be a bit too late, because then when they come back to the topic, they may have a plan as to like how to push their agenda. But anyway, hopefully my take is a bit more logical and rational, and that you get to see a bigger picture as to what's going on. And with that said, take a walk with me and I'll give you a different perspective. All right, and with that said, welcome to the Pure Will Show. I'm William Pule. Now, before we continue, I do want to clarify this though, that I am not condoning or supporting what was said, and I'm not supporting the people who said it. I'm just cautioning people as to the implications of what may follow, right? Because of the adverse reactions towards what these people were saying. And we need to be careful, because if we allow either the government or politicians to push a certain agenda, then it gives them free reign to do exactly what they want to do. And I think in this particular situation, we need to push back so that they don't get to do what their agenda is. So just to give everybody a summary of what happened, you guys know about the podcast, you know about what was said, but to those who don't, here's a little bit of a reminder, and people will sort of remember what was said. Anyway, here we go.
So the owners of Open Chats, a podcast, have issued an unconditional apology for derogatory remarks made about coloured people. This after the race group was described as crazy and incestuous in an episode aired 2 weeks ago. In a letter of apology, the podcaster says it regrets the racist and sexist remarks, adding that it does not support any form of racism, discrimination or segregation. The ANC and the EFF have expressed outrage, while the Patriotic Alliance has lodged a formal complaint with the Equality Court and the Human Rights Commission. The DA has also indicated it intends to report the matter.
Now, there you have it. So that has caused other people to react towards this, and mostly the reaction has been negative, but one that was way more visceral and way overboard, some may say, right, is one from Gayton McKenzie, and he had this to say after he found out about the whole situation.
SG, I'm just gonna go into a meeting. I want Eugene, Evan, Marco, all the lawyers we have in the PA. I want a report today of how we're going to deal with those people that said coloreds are crazy. I want us to use everything at our disposal. Tonight at 7 p.m. so I can tell our people what action we are going to take. It's racism. We must never allow people to become that comfortable. If we have to say that about other races, we would have been on every front page.
People are scared to say that. I'm not scared to say black people are lazy. You know what? We do not want to do the things. We want to do the things that
Right. So the clip that I added there at the end is not to show the double standards. I think Gayton McKenzie's been receiving, has been on the tail end of being exposed for having double standards enough on the internet. Okay. But I did want to add it in there just to add another layer and to sort of give context to the kinds of statements that people make. So if you go to the Open Chats podcast and listen to what the clip is now being removed from their podcast, but basically it is them saying a group of people are X. Okay, it may be horrible in what they said, but it's a group of people are X. And the clip that I included there of Gayton McKenzie is that he's not afraid to say that a group of people are X. All right, we need to keep that in mind as we go on, because it like when the double standards start being exposed, then you start thinking about the reactions a bit differently, because certain people react certain ways to what certain people have said, right, about a group of people, but they react differently to the same statements, just describing different actions. All right. And so that out of the way, I know it's not a big sample size, but it gives you an idea of what the general public may react like when they hear these sort of things, right? This is a news coverage of a bunch of different people that comment on what these kids said. So let's check that out a little bit.
The kinds of utterings made.
I'm not offended, but I feel like because we are in a country where freedom of speech is okay. But I feel like you should always watch like what you say, because people do take offense. Some people don't. Everyone is different. That's my take on it.
Like I feel like they normally talk a lot of mad stuff on there. Like that's just their view, man. Like that's how they see it. But we don't chow our cousins, man. We don't chow our families. But they like to make statements and stuff. And that's the only way you're gonna get people to view your channel. So I respect them for doing that, because they're getting the views they're wanting.
I personally think it's a nice show. They're just making their own thing. But like for this current incident that they made, I think they should just humble themselves and go apologize to the colored people for what they said. That's all. But then otherwise their show, there's nothing wrong with their show. They're just people, our age mates, they're just trying to make a living like all of us. So they just chose to like take the wrong step. Like the things they said, they should just humble themselves and go apologize.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that people can say such things and claim it to just be free speech, because it's very easy to say what's on your mind, but you can keep it to yourself. You know, not everything has to be blurted out, especially not so openly like the way he did on that podcast. Saying something as derogatory and so generalizing, it's like, what's the point?
They were wrong about what they said, but I think the ones that are dealing with the issue are taking it a little bit too far. They should have been corrected in such a way that will have educated them, and then educate other people also who thinks like the people who talked on the podcast, not to go to court, cancel them or so on, because this just escalates the hate between these two races.
That was a crazy take, okay? You know, applying such a stereotype to just one group of people that's not even true at all. I mean, have we like learned nothing, you know, be inclusive to everyone? I mean, it's really hard when people are out there doing these things, and I feel like there's a difference between freedom of speech and just being a terrible person and saying these really, really nasty things.
Like, I think there are two ways you can look at it, because like they're sharing their opinions at the end of the day. But I feel like there are some other things which need to be kept to yourself, because like they have a lot of viewers, and like people who are watching are youth people, and like most of the time we get influenced by what they say. So I don't think it was a good thing.
I don't think it's right what they did, because they are very judgmental, those who say that thing about colors. They take one look at colors, then they think we're the bad guys because the way we are. But I don't think it's really so. They don't know the backstory of what we, what trauma we all went through. But that's what they said. I don't think that is true.
The only reason why there's so much attention on it is because it's a different race. this podcast has been bashing, well, making fun of black South Africans for a very long time, more particularly black women. And the only reason why people are getting attention on it is because it's a different race.
Well, and there you have it, right? Now, I think it's safe to say that society seems to be in good hands, okay? So their reaction has pretty much all of them negative towards what these people said or what these kids said, right? And I would wager that the general public has had a more reasonable reaction towards what was said. But when it came to Gayton, I think that was a bit too much. Now, his reaction has caused people to jump to the defense of these kids. Now, I think what was happening there was that people weren't defending what these kids were saying. They were defending these kids from an overboard reaction. But from Gayton McKenzie's side, right, I think he came at it from a position of, well, if certain people in the past have been cancelled because of these kinds of utterance or what these kids were saying, then these kids should be cancelled for what they said too. And I think his overboard reaction came from that position. So that's why I think for some people, they find it reasonable for Gayton and Patriotic Alliance to have reacted that way. But also, if you listen to the group of these people, the average person, right, around South Africa, even though it's a small sample size, but I think if you were to sample, I don't know, a lot more people, you probably end up with similar results, okay? Because they've largely been rejectful towards these kids. But now let's get into the more serious matter, because I want you guys to listen to this, and I would classify this as the progressive reaction, okay? This is how progressive react. You can smell a progressive from a mile away because of like what they advocate for, okay? And I want you to really listen to what this guy is saying and what he proposes, okay, as a solution. And they always propose these solutions, by the way. But anyway, let's take a listen. All right.
419,000 subscribers, and they do kind of sell themselves. This podcast is intended for entertainment and comedic purposes. While jokes and commentary may touch on sensitive topics, there is no malicious intent behind any of the content. The goal is humor, not harm. I don't know in what context that could be seen as humor, not harm.
Now, here's the thing. That's his opinion. That's his subjective opinion, okay? Somebody's humor, right, or entertainment may be something disgusting to somebody else, right? Or something disgusting to somebody or something hurtful to somebody may be somebody's poetry, all right? That's how the world works. When there's something so subjective, you are not the arbiter of what's entertaining or what's humorous, all right? A bad joke is a joke nonetheless. And if people don't like the bad joke, doesn't mean you must cancel the comedian, all right? Or doesn't mean you need to regulate the comedian or whatever it is you want to advocate for. And it gets worse, right?
Well, this was the first time that they'd come to my attention. This is actually the second time where they said, if the EFF wins the election, the DA will make Cape Town a new country. And that speaker said, well, it's because the DA wants to do this and because Malema wants white people out of the country. Now, that is both not humor, that's not funny, and that is very harmful because those two things are both completely untrue and always have been. One, Julius Malema has never, ever, even a single time said that he wants all white people to be out of the country. And two, the DA has never said that they want to separate Cape Town from the rest of South Africa. They have never supported nor been deeply involved in nor aggressively advocated for a part of the country to leave the country and the DA to leave with it. Now, you could just say, oh, these are ignorant young people. They didn't know better. But the problem is with the size of the audience that they have, when they say something like that, that creates harm, because that's very real damaging disinformation in a context where lots of viewers and listeners may go, oh, okay, that must be true, never fact check or follow up. And suddenly these two harmful, untrue beliefs about Julius Malema and the EFF as a whole, and about the DA in Cape Town spread amongst people. And that informs whether they vote, it informs who they vote for. We need to talk about.
Now, he said a lot there, but a part of it is true that these kids said untrue things, like factually false things, right? Which, that's reasonable. However, again, they don't present themselves as political experts or political commentators. It's purely entertainment and comedy. And even though the topics may be sensitive, they present themselves as just trash talkers, right? And the general public seems like they know that, right? After watching the different groups of people that reacted towards this, seems like they get it. Why you don't get it is beyond me. And furthermore, yeah, you have an argument there about the unfactual, like the false claims that they made. However, I don't think these kids influence people at all as to how they vote. Maybe some people may be influenced by these kids, how they vote. But then again, if you're going to watch entertainment and comedy and vote based on that, then that's on you rather than them. But then again, that's just my opinion on that. He says they say untrue things and misinformation, and it's not comedy, right? Because they have a large following, okay? And that they'll influence people, right? I want you to keep those points in mind and don't forget them.
The fact that South Africa's laws are not yet up to date with, they have not evolved with the internet. Because in the old days, before everybody had the internet and access or the tools to rapidly spread information very fast, there were very few moments where real defamation could happen, because there were very few people who had access to legacy media or a public mouthpiece that a lot of people would hear, which meant that with fewer cases of defamation, the courts could handle defamation cases. But now, with everybody creating and speaking so much into the world through the internet, what you need is rapid solutions. Because this is happening all the time, and it has real ramifications, defamation, disinformation, and bigotry, you need a system which can rapidly process those cases to get justice. That will then cause people to think, wow, I really need to think before I post this video online. We want to protect freedom of expression, and we want to protect freedom of speech, but we also want there to be consequences for people who violate that right.
Right. So again, it's just like how these people think it's sometimes it's not that confusing. However, it's just ridiculous, because you don't listen to what people say and then decide, well, we're gonna regulate a bunch of this. There's already systems in place for that, and it's not happening all the time. I only know of about 2 to 3 cases, and one of them fell under defamation, so that's been taken care of. There's a mechanism for that, and the other one also takes care of itself, because that falls under certain laws, and they're probably still litigating that, right? And then there's this situation. So it's not like a widespread thing that's happening all over the place. And he says it's happening all the time. It's not happening all the time, right? And how the damaging ones, if you can prove damages, then you'll have a successful case. But you don't just create new rules or whatever just because too much of something is happening, right? All you have to do is enforce whatever laws you have already in place. It's really as simple as that. But I want you to remember what he said, right? Untrue things, they have a large following, they could influence people, right? This is a bunch of kids in entertainment and comedy, and that's what he says about them. Now, I want you to listen to this ANC Secretary General, right? This is somebody who has a massive platform, right? This is somebody who influences our economy. This is somebody who influences how our crime is handled, right? Pretty much influences government. He's part of the government. So he influences how people vote, right? His decisions in government impact everyone's lives, okay, in South Africa. Every single person. And so people vote a certain way based on these people's decisions and what they say in public. So remember what that, I think his name is Dan, right? Dan, remember what he said, and I want you to listen to the statements that this guy is saying, and I want you to remember the statements that Gayton McKenzie said, and keep in mind the statements that the kid said, right? Which is a group of people are X, right? So let's listen to Fikile Mbalula here.
Here in South Africa, Donald Trump called for whites here, gave them special status in America. 49 car guards arrived in America. Car guards arrived in America. He is saying that we are a racist country, we are everything else. He gave them special status to leave. They didn't leave. And then when they arrived there, it's chaps who are looking after cars here. Because this country, they are the most well looked after people by this economy. They are okay. KDK, they are fine in this economy. And then they did not go to the United States of America. In less than a week being there, they started killing each other there. A man killing his girlfriend there. This is what they do here. Killing each other over something. They are in the courts. Killing our people, saying they look like monkeys. Killing blacks here in our country.
And there you have it. And there you have it. Now, the people that he's talking about, right? The people that he's talking about is this situation over here, which is a Cape Town teacher, Kim Towney, murdered by husband in US domestic violence. All right. Now, when you listen to Fikile Mbalula, you would think, oh, those Afrikaans refugees that went to the US, right? They're now killing each other, right? That's the picture he's painting, and that's exactly what he's saying, right? However, if we read more about the situation, this is what the story is, okay? Kim White Towney and Alexandra Towney met in Dubai, where she worked as a teacher and he served in the military. Their relationship began as a whirlwind romance. However, Kim's brother, Jason White of Parklands in Cape Town, noted that there were early signs that all was not as it seemed, all right? Then, on May 25, a chilling call was made to U.S. Emergency Services 911. I don't think she's with us any longer, unquote, or quote unquote. With those haunting words, 32-year-old Alexandra Towney requested police assistance at his home in Chantilly, West Virginia, all right? Inside, authorities found the lifeless body of his wife, Kim. She had been strangled, reportedly while their toddler son was in another room. Kim, also 32 and originally from Parklands, Cape Town, had visibly upper body trauma and was pronounced dead at the scene. All right? Now, if we read on further down, we get to see exactly where these people come from. Now, as you saw, they met in Dubai. All right? And it says here about Alexander, last weekend, Alexander, a U.S. citizen and military veteran, told police that an argument had escalated and he had fatally choked his wife, according to reports. He was arrested at the scene and charged with second-degree murder. He is currently being held without bail. Now, again, when you're speaking about something that's harmful, right? When you're speaking about something that's not factual, that's exactly what Dan described that this guy did. And this guy doesn't present himself as an entertainer or a comedian speaking about serious topics. This is the guy influencing policy. This is the guy influencing government. This is the guy influencing foreign policy, right? And telling people about foreign policy and what's happening in government that influences people's thoughts, right? And opinions about what's going on in the world. And the opinion and beliefs that he's spreading around is that people, the refugees that were here, the refugees that went to the US are now killing each other, which is untrue. Now, I would wager that this is a far more harmful thing to do or say than a bunch of kids, right? And a podcast saying silly things, although that could be disgusting and untrue, or some of them disgusting and some of them untrue, but it's not worth the visceral reaction that they had. Instead, this would be something to react to. Now, again, remember how people reacted towards those kids, how other politicians reacted towards those kids, right? And this is one of them who reacted a similar way to those kids.
I'm at Brooklyn Police Station in Hatfield, Pretoria, in Tshwane, and I am sure you know exactly what it is that I am here to do. And in my hands is the criminal complaints, because we are going to be laying charges against the two individuals from the Open Chats podcast.
Yeah, we are finished. Okay.
Yeah. There you have it. The charges have been laid, and as we say in the Patriotic Alliance, they want us lost.
And there you have it, right? These kids say disgusting and offensive things, and now they're getting cases thrown at them, right? They're getting court cases thrown at them. Fikile Mbalula said untrue things that are quite harmful, right, to the country. Crickets. Nobody says a word. Not even Dan here, Mr. Regulations, right? Not even Liam Jacobs here. They won't file. The Patriotic Alliance won't file charges against what about what Fikile Mbalula said. Right? He just called a whole group of people killers. Now, again, double standard, sure, but that's not the main topic of this. Now, you're going to get to see exactly what the push is, right? And let's listen to this news media coverage.
You can have freedom of speech, but to an extent.
Yeah, and we need to perhaps start to get to a point where we talk about that balance, right? The freedom of speech, the responsibility that comes with it, and really how you share that balance and the information of it in a world where anyone can take up a platform now and be able to build quite the following. But Mr. Mutale, the Patriotic Alliance having taken the issue forward, and you know, we saw Gayton McKenzie asking the legal minds of the Patriotic Alliance to act swiftly.
Yeah, good evening to you and good evening to the viewers. I heard you talking about the fact that the podcast has made an apology. Well, that apology was generic, and of course it lacked details. Now, we have sent them a letter of demand in which we demand a signed apology in which they are explicitly mentioning the colored community, who they have wronged. And in that apology, they must go further and make a commitment never to repeat such hate speech. And
now, what he said there is very important, and I want you to keep in mind. What he said, that they need to mention who they've wronged, right? Who they've wronged in the community, right? Keep that in mind, because it's important towards the case that they filed against them.
Racial stereotyping again.
And so will there be further steps? I know that there was an intention also to pursue hate speech charges against this group.
We, in fact, have already done that. We have laid charges of hate speech, and we have also laid charges of crimea injuria. And of course, as you have already stated, we are filing a complaint with the Human Rights Commission as well as the Equality Court. Those are the steps that we are taking.
Now, what this guy is talking about, right, is called crimen injuria. But before we get to crimen injuria, what people normally do, right, when they feel like they've been wronged by a podcast or entertainer or whatever, and there's real damages or harm, right, they usually go to defamation and hate speech. Okay, but we're gonna look at defamation for now. And so what defamation usually does is that it's usually not applicable to large groups. Defamation only works if the group is small enough that individuals can be identified. And everybody knows that, right? Saying something about all Afrikaners or all Zulus or all whatever race group it is doesn't let a specific person sue for defamation unless they can prove listeners would think it applies directly to them. Now, that's why they haven't gone this route, because they haven't really offended one particular person, and the group is too large to actually apply to what they said, right? So I think that's why they filed crimen injuria cases or the hate speech cases. Now with crimen injuria, I don't think it's going to work, right? And remember what he said, right? His demand was they need to name the people that they have wronged. I think that's a sinister way of trying to get them to sort of build their case for them. They're trying to get the kids to build Patriotic Alliance's case because they know crimen injuria isn't going to work in a situation. Why? Because crimen injuria is about a personal dignity of a specific person or small group, not a large group, right? Now, in defamation, a large group doesn't apply. The group has to be small enough that individuals can be identified. Now, with crimen injuria, a large group also doesn't apply because it's about a specific person or a small group. I don't think, though, I may be wrong about this, that even if the group is small, I don't think you have to name the individuals in the group, all right? Now, what I think is happening is that they want to build this case so that they can also get a defamation case, right? To make their case stronger, right? But again, a large group in crimen injuria doesn't count. It's not going to work, which is the situation they have. They are going to have to twist themselves into a pretzel to try and prove crimen injuria. The only thing they might have a leg on is hate speech. It's about a group-based dignity and societal harm, okay? But I think this becomes a civil matter then, right? So I don't think they would win this case because if you go into the episode of that Open Chats podcast, they've shown remorse and they've apologized. In my opinion, I don't think they should have apologized for specific reasons, not because they didn't have anything to apologize for, but I'll explain further on. But I don't think hate speech would apply because they showed remorse, right? They made an apology, even though a flimsy one at that, a horrible apology, right? They made an apology. They removed that section of the podcast, right? And also, if you watch the podcast, which is what I did, moment of silence, right? If you watch the entire podcast, right, they say positive things about all groups of people as well. They also say negative things about all groups of people. So I don't think it comes across as malicious. And if you were to build a case on them, right, in court, they'd be able to show that, look, this was not a malicious intent in any way, shape or form. And Patriotic Alliance knows that, and they are not going to win that case. That's why it's really important to them that they focus on the crimen injuria case, but they also don't have a case there. That's why they're demanding an apology so fast and get these kids to name certain people or name whoever they've wronged so they can say, yeah, you see, we've got it. We've got the criteria met for crimen injuria, which they are now forcing these kids to build Patriotic Alliance's case for them. Now, I say this because it describes it even more as to what crimen injuria is, right? In South African law, crimen injuria is the unlawful, intentional, and serious violation of the dignity or privacy of another person, okay? Again, person, not a whole group of people. And here are the key points. It's a criminal offense, which is why Patriotic Alliance wants it so much, unlike many hate speech cases, which are handled in the equality courts as a civil matter, right? So the hate speech one is going to be handled as a civil matter. So they might just pay a fine and then go about their day, right? But Patriotic Alliance really wants a crimen injuria case. And it's also about offending someone's dignity, not necessarily inciting hatred or discrimination, okay? It can apply to words, gestures, or actions. The victim can be an individual or sometimes a defined group. But the more general the group, the harder it is to prove individual dignity was harmed. So again, crimen injuria doesn't apply to what these kids did. All right, it was the group is too large for them to apply to crimen injuria, right? And even though crimen injuria says it's a defined group, it's a defined group, and that's why Patriotic Alliance wants these kids to kind of narrow down who they've hurt. So one of the key points here says the victim can be an individual or sometimes a defined group, but the more general the group, the harder it is to prove individual dignity was harmed. Now, this is important because someone could say, well, the defined group could be this particular race, right? And we'll go to another lawful definition of what a defined group is, especially under crimen injuria, which says in South African law, when crimen injuria mentions a defined group, it means a group of people that is clearly identifiable and specific, not just a vague or random crowd. Examples of defined groups: an entire sports team, or a specific church or congregation, or a particular family, or employees of a specific company. What makes it defined is that the members are known or can be clearly determined, even if you don't know each one person. That's really important. This is different from broad or undefined groups like all women, or black people, or all politicians, which usually falls under hate speech law if it's harmful, but not necessarily crimen injuria unless tied to a specific event or identifiable subject. And that's why they're going to struggle extremely hard to prove their case. They're going to have to, again, twist themselves into a pretzel and to try and prove these certain things, because this just doesn't fall. What these kids did just doesn't fall under crimen injuria. And that's why it comes across as extremely, extremely desperate.
William, it's interesting because you've got Diego, who says, well, we've got a hate speech pledge at the South African Podcasters Guild. Not many podcasters are perhaps organized enough to be part of the guild and, go through that pledge. But it does show just how much work needs to be done in informing and educating podcasters around the responsibility that we have. But then there's also the contentious and difficult discussion around how we even go about regulating what people do online.
Ding, 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 ding. That's the push, okay? The push is regulating what people do online. Now, the reason they're doing this, right, is because they know that podcasters aren't regulated. This is across the world, by the way. I think the only countries that are pushing hard for regulation so far is Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and Germany. And we know what's happening in the UK. People are actually being arrested for posting things on X, all right? And this is the push, okay? And the reason they're doing this is because, as you know, the more podcasters rise, right, which began rising from 2016, maybe earlier, but 2016. And to journalists and government, they didn't really see it as anything at all. Then it shot up at 2023, but a lot more podcasts were being political and a lot more content creators were covering politics. And it's slowly getting into the attention of the government. And why this is important? It's because a lot more people, right, are listening to podcasters and they're listening to content creators. But again, society is more reasonable than these propagandists or the government, right? Society is able to tell whether something is for entertainment purposes and it's just comedy, even though not funny. And they're able to tell when something is serious, because there are podcasters and content creators that present themselves as political commentators, right? So yeah, this thing of regulations, that's a very dangerous thing to fall into, because then you get into the territory of controlling what people say. Not only that, but you're also controlling what people can and cannot hear.
So look, I think that, one of the things that would be a good idea would be for the Podcasters Guild to engage with other self and co-regulatory bodies like the Press Council, the BCCSA, and then look to see what elements they can merge or share with them in terms of how they deal with particular complaints. Because the benefit of a system like that is that when you get a case like this, there's an easy, cheap, effective, and speedy mechanism for any member of the public to utilize. So any podcaster, as it stands, can happily go and apply to join the Press Council, and then they'll be bound by that code, which means that if there's a complaint against them, it'll go through that, be assessed on the basis of that code, and then there will be an appropriate outcome given to that, as opposed to needing to go to either the equality court or to go to the civil court and lodge a case under Papuda in order to try and take these things further. So
now, when we come back, perhaps we need to get into some of the concerning trends that we are seeing taking place when people are able to have platforms that a lot of the time garner quite the following on social media and online. America, of course, the Patriotic Alliance having taken the steps to open a charge of hate speech against some of these podcasters. But what is it that we do about regulating podcasts, especially in an era where it's believed that, well, these are people that essentially have a lot of freedom of expression. Diego, I actually do want to bring that one to you. The trends that we're starting to see of that, what one viewer called an abuse of this freedom of expression, concerning trends where podcasters perhaps are hooking on to themes that attract numbers but are detrimental.
And detrimental to what? Like, these people, they never say exactly what that detriment is. She's saying it's detrimental and then she just leaves it there. That's why you need to pay attention to these people when they ask their questions or when they speak. Their agenda comes through a lot. Now, what she focused on there was that somebody said abuse of freedom of speech. You cannot abuse freedom of speech, okay? The moment you abuse freedom of speech, then it's a crime. So it's not an abuse of a certain right that you have. It's just that you went outside of that right and you committed a crime. That's all it is. It's like somebody saying you abused your right to remain silent. How do you abuse your right to remain silent? It's just, it doesn't work. There's already laws and mechanisms in place for these things. Once you start, say, abusing freedom of speech or freedom of expression, then you no longer in freedom of speech or freedom of expression territory. All right. If we take an example of this, is the whole Kill the Boer song, right, with Julius Malema. That is outside of the bounds of freedom of expression because it simply states you have freedom of expression and the right to express yourself freely, right? However, it is limited, and that limitation is incitement to violence. Saying that kill a group of people, that is incitement to violence. That is a call to action to do a specific thing to a group of people, all right? However, because of the courts that we have in South Africa, obviously there's going to be favoritism and a double standard, so they're going to twist themselves into a pretzel to try and say, no, it's a political message, it's a metaphor, it's not meant, whatever. But that's a whole different topic to deal with. But then again, what she's describing is what Julius and EFF does, okay, which is outside of the bounds of freedom of speech or freedom of expression, okay. That's what she's describing. However, there's no way that you can abuse freedom of speech or freedom of expression, okay? I believe that people should be able to say whatever it is they want to say outside of a crime, right? And trying to stop people from doing so means that you're never going to hear what people really are, right? I want to know the type of character that you people are. That way I know what not to subscribe to. That way I know what not to follow or what not to support. All right. Now, what regulations will do is that they not only censor the podcasters or content creators. What it does is that it curates what the listener or viewer can or cannot see, right? The real regulators of podcasts are the viewers and listeners, okay? When you get content, this is how you regulate it. I like it. I don't like it. I'll never subscribe to it. And then move on with your life. That's how you regulate it, right? And that's why they say that podcasts and content creation is self-regulated across the world. That's how it's regulated. But these guys want more. Why? Because they're losing power and they're losing credibility, and entertainers and content creators are getting more credibility. If they want that credibility back, all they have to do is report the news objectively, not have your own opinions like what this woman does in these questions. Notice and listen to how she asks her questions and what she says, what words she's using and to frame her questions and what the situation is. Okay.
So I think you mentioned it earlier, and this is why we started this conversation about our SAPG pledge. You mentioned the podcast and chill incident that happened, and Willem is correct. We do want to put that mechanism in place where the podcasters can be held accountable, and the members of the general public can have a platform where they can lay a complaint, and we can have a look at that and resolve that quickly and effectively. So yes, there is a level of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, but that is clearly defined out in our current laws and legislation. And like the Patriotic Alliance has done, they've used that platform to take the Open Chats podcast to court and to let that run through the Equality Court and like the SA Human Rights Commission. So we need to let that process play out. Those are rules that are established in our laws and are governed. And as the SAPG, we are trying to be that platform that can help enforce those rules.
Now, I don't have a problem with this guild thing that they have, okay? What I do caution people, though, is that you sign up to it, then you follow their rules, all right? Their rules shouldn't apply to everyone else, okay? It should apply to only those who sign up for the guild. And I think they talk about it a bit more later on.
Yeah, but talk to me about the trends that we're seeing. So, you talk about the podcast and chill incident. I'm talking about themes that are becoming louder and louder on some of these podcasts that are becoming more and more detrimental. Help us with that.
It's not that themes are becoming louder and louder and whatever. It's just more people are starting to get into podcasts. Again, this falls under what Dan was saying, that it's happening too much. It's not happening too much. It's just that we have more people going into this industry. All right. We've only had like a couple of instances, right, of where you could say, yeah, this kind of crosses the line. But again, I don't think it falls under criminality. And if you were to punish people severely for just hurtful words, you kind of have to go back to like what Fikile Mbalula said and then what Julia said and go, well, no, these people are chanting for the killing of a group of people, and now these people are saying a bunch of people are crazy and they get criminal charges against them. Something is off here, right? But again, it's not really about punishing these kids. It isn't. What these people are trying to do is build a case study so that they can take it to the government and says, this is how you regulate the podcast industry, right? That's how you regulate the podcast industry. And I think that's the play here. So it's not really about what these kids said, and it's not really about punishing the kids, right? Punishing these kids. It's about building a case study, because there's no case study for regulating podcasts. So all they want to do is build a case study and start regulating them.
I think it's a difficult one to kind of regulate and to talk about. So yes, there are definitely themes, but people do have a freedom of expression. You can express your views. You can express your you have the right to do so. So I don't think we can regulate a theme particularly, but one does need to be careful with how you communicate that. So you can't be racist, you can't be hateful, you can't discriminate against people directly. That is something that we obviously don't stand for, and we won't stand for. But I think it becomes difficult then. Like I said, it's a fine line and it's a fine balance, but we also have to stick within the bounds of the current constitution.
Yeah, Mr. Mutale, what you...
Now, again, as I said, right, if you want to sign up to this guild, then that's on you. But what's basically going to happen is that as it goes on, they're going to start using these platforms and these guilds to say, well, look, we have control, or we have controlled and managed how podcasts work, and people should listen to these podcasters because they've been trained to speak a certain way and espouse certain views that don't hurt anyone, right? It's so ridiculous because they're gonna present themselves as the standard that everyone else should follow. All right. Now, I'm in a belief that, in my opinion, if you were to seek my advice, is not to join them. But I'm not against it if you do join them, but then you're going to have to follow their rules. But for everyone else, they should just be let free to say whatever they want outside of a crime.
You say to the argument that says, you know, these young podcasters, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. These are young podcasters that, you know, may not necessarily be all that aware in terms of the ethics that they need to uphold when they have a platform like what they do have and they've garnered the numbers. A media practitioner, for instance, in journalism, has a full understanding of the ethics that they need to uphold and the role that they play in society at a bigger scale. But when you're a podcaster, that's information you may very well not have access to.
She's not playing devil's advocate. Okay, I'll tell you what she's doing here. All right, like most people are not making that argument. I think most people understand that's what those kids are, and in that situation, those kids just messed up. Okay. But no one's making the argument that, they're just kids, they don't know any better or whatever. You could make that argument, but I don't think society at large is making that argument at all, right? So why she's doing that, the argument that's really should be made is this. Are what these kids saying damaging enough to warrant regulations on podcasts? What should people really be free to say whatever they want? And how do regulations work in terms of trying to stop what people are trying to sort of believe or have opinions on or whatever? But when do those opinions actually fall under criminal cases or fall under fall outside of free speech and freedom of expression? And that's what you would need to regulate. However, it's going to become too difficult for this person here to answer that question. So the easiest thing to do is give him a layup question, a low-hanging fruit, so that he can easily answer it. And the viewers or people listening can go, you know what? That's reasonable. Yeah, let's have regulations on this. And that's the whole purpose of presenting the devil's advocate easy question that these kids, they don't know any better. And then it's nah, they should know better. So we should have regulations so that people do know better, right? When it's just like, no, everybody understands that they're just kids. They will learn their errors. When society punishes them by not viewing their content, by not subscribing to them, right? Then their numbers go down, their net worth decreases, right? Then they'll see that, wait a minute, we've messed up here, right? And they'll self-reflect on that. And then later on, as time goes, they'll realize that what they did was wrong. But most importantly, they will start realizing why they did, whatever it is they did is wrong, right? And so when they do make an apology, then their apology is sincere, right? It's not as flimsy as a statement they just released a bunch ago. And when their apology is sincere, then people will either accept it or they'll reject it. That's how society works, right? You don't need to regulate that. That's the form of regulation that happens in society. But these people want more regulations. But also, what she said was that these kids don't have information that the media practitioner and journalist follow and whatever. And that's the whole point, is that people or podcasters or content creators don't fall under journalists. They are not journalists. So you cannot treat them like journalists. You, lady, you have to fall under those rules and you have to follow those rules. But with the questions that she asked, there's no ways that she didn't discuss this like with her producers, right? Therefore, producers would know that, wait a minute, when it comes to podcasts and content creation, they're not regulated. They don't fall under journalistic ethics and rules and whatever. There's a reason journalists have to follow that, and that's because they have to report news, so they have to be accurate. They cannot insert their opinions in it unless it is an opinion-specific show, right? Which they would have to announce that they are an opinion show. When it comes to podcasters and content creators, like almost 99% of the time, it's just entertainment, and people know that, right? That's why it's not regulated and it doesn't fall under journalism or whatever. There are serious podcasters and there are serious content creators that would follow, as in voluntarily follow journalistic ethics and all of those things, because they choose to do so, right? They choose to do so on their own volition. And yeah, as to these kids, no, They should be.
Journalism has a full understanding of the ethics that they need to uphold and the role that they play in society at a bigger scale. But when you're a podcaster, that's information you may very well not have access to.
No. We don't buy that excuse. If you have a look at the magnitude of the offenses that are being committed on this podcast, clearly you can see some of them are premeditated.
The magnitude of offenses. again, these people, right? Like what you see here is people disagreeing with what's been said on podcasts, okay? And most of the time, content creators, right, are criticizing politicians. And these politicians don't like it. It has to be cut short by any means necessary. And that's why these people say it's happening all the time, or the magnitude of the offenses. It's like, what? We only know a handful of situations where people went out of bounds. Other than that, I don't think anyone's done anything hectic at all, right? Some people may have unpopular views, but it doesn't mean that's an offense and that you should regulate it. Not a snowball's chance in hell.
They are just driven by the desire to have numbers and to generate revenue. So we really don't buy that excuse. We understand there's freedom of expression, but freedom of expression comes with responsibility. You can't use your right to express yourself freely to violate other people's rights and dignity. That one we say a big no to.
They violated people's rights. What rights did they violate? These people, they'll never give you the details. I think this whole segment is way longer than this, but if you have a chance to mention what crime these people committed, then I think the first thing you need to do is mention the crime that these people committed. Again, right? You can say hate speech, but that's a civil matter, right? Criminal injuria, but now you're forcing them to actually build your case for you, right? So they didn't violate any rights at all. Oh, they didn't like commit any crimes at all. And if they did, you're gonna have to mention what crime they committed. You can't just say, oh, they violated rights. And remember this, right? Your freedom of expression doesn't end where somebody's right begins. It just doesn't work like that at all. So yeah, these people need to try something else. But anyway, let's end it off with old Gayton McKenzie here. Who wants results, right?
I would like to know all steps that's going to be taken. We are going to go after them in their personal capacity legally. We're going to go after the show. We must. I don't know all the instruments that is at our disposal legally, but you guys will tell me today at 7 p.m. and I will then post what you guys are going to do. Thank you very much.
Now, I don't know how long this video is gonna be, but yeah, that's about it. Okay, I would love to make a video on how these kids should have reacted, that would have had a better outcome, and how people should actually react to these people. And it's very easy actually to react to these people. We don't need politicians and journalists to tell us how to react to certain things, or what to say and what not to say, or what to listen to and what not to listen to. Okay, I want people to express their views and express themselves freely, right? And then we'll decide whether we don't like it or not. However, in a country where there's this double standard, though, it becomes more difficult, and you end up with a situation like the one Gayton McKenzie has put himself into, and he's about to find out the hard way as to how this kind of worldview works. Okay, and he signed up to it. Whether he knows that he signed up to it or not, I don't know, but he's finding out real hard, because the tides have turned on him now in the most extreme way possible, and he's on defense. And what I think is really going to happen in like a couple of days or a week or so is that he's going to start walking back his statements that, oh no, this was AI or whatever. He's going to start making excuses now, because why? He has to pray to the altar of identity politics, right? Because before they chew him up and spit him out like a piece of gum, because he wants to stay in their good graces. And that's what happens with this worldview. But yeah, I'd like to make a video on how you should react to these people, because giving in, and when they demand apologies and you write an apology and they say, no, we don't like that apology, write this kind of apology, then you're giving in to their agenda, which is they are going to regulate the heck out of the rest of the podcasters who they didn't do anything wrong, right? All because of a bunch of kids said something horrible, which is something I do not like. But anyway, this is a long video. I'm going to try and keep the rest of them short in future. And I hope you enjoyed, and I hope there was something valuable in there. And yeah, that's about it before I blabber on. And with that said, my name is William again, and I'll see you on the flip side. Cheers.